Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Mad Knitting. My name is Susan, my pronouns are she, her, hers, and this is episode 60-something. I think it's 63. Today is Tuesday, May 28th, 2024, and I think it's been about 3 weeks, almost 3 weeks since my last video, so I have kind of a backlog of things to talk about. You can find me elsewhere online as Madtown Mama on Ravelry and Madtown_Mama on Instagram, where I spend way too much time. I kind of hate it these days, to tell you the truth, because, gosh, you know, I heard a podcaster once, like an audio podcaster, talk about how our brains are not designed. We don't cope well with the way social media is designed, because you can open your Instagram feed and within the space of 30 seconds, you'll see posts about genocide in Palestine, which is horrific. I mean, stomach churning what's happening there right now. Cute kittens, somebody's kid, somebody's garden, somebody's knitting project, election misinformation. Like, it's just this deluge of information on so many different emotional levels, and we just can't process that. And that's where I'm at with Instagram right now, but I'm still on there and I'm still posting. So anyway, in case you're wondering, yes, this is a giant jar of tea. I like to make sun tea and sometimes mix it with fizzy water. And right now I have some mint leaves and ice. And anyway, just in case you're curious, this is like a blueberry hibiscus blend, and I put strawberry fizzy water in here, so I'm feeling very, very fancy. Also, it just started to storm outside, so you might hear thunder. Just so you know, that's what's going on. Okay, I rambled a bit in my introduction. Did I tell you that I live in Madison, Wisconsin? I do. I live here with my family, with my husband, my 2 kids. I work from home for a small nonprofit, and that gives me the flexibility to, if I have a slow enough schedule, to stop and make videos about crafty shit in the middle of the day if I really want to, and today I really want to. Let's start with what I'm wearing, in case you're curious. This is the Livy shawl. It's a pattern by Tammy Gore, and I love it. I'm not gonna take it off because it's actually kind of chilly in here, and this is keeping me warm, but this is the second of 3 that I have made. If you've watched me in the last couple of months, you will know that I made this in New Zealand when we were on a family trip there, and it's using very, very special yarn from Coast to Coast Yarn Company that somebody sent me as a surprise gift, and I just love it. I love this shawl. I love these colors. It's just a great pattern. Okay, so my first 2 finished objects to share with you today have already been finished and sent off to the intended recipients. So I've got these clips to insert. The first one is a pair of mittens that I made for my friend Stephanie. I had almost finished those at my last episode, and sure enough, I finished them and met her and gave them to her. So I'm gonna insert about a 1-minute clip that I made right before I left to meet her. So I'll put that here. Good morning. It's very early Saturday morning, and I'm about to go hiking with my friend who I made these mittens for. So I'm just going to show you real quick before I leave, because I literally finished them a few minutes ago. They're still a little bit damp from being steam blocked. Aren't they pretty? This is the Happy Mittens pattern by Maiju Kallio. She's a designer from Finland. It's got lots of beautiful designs. I used Ultra Alpaca from Barocco in the worsted weight. Let's see if I can, I'm holding the phone with one hand. Trying not to be too shaky. Try one on for you. It's so pretty. These are all leftovers. Some from projects so long ago I don't remember what the yarn was for. But yeah, I'm very happy with how these turned out, and I wanted to make a little clip to show you. We did indeed have a wonderful hike together. This was like very early in May, and we met at a hiking trail a couple hours away that I had never been to before. And it was like warm, but not too warm, and sunny, and just absolutely perfect. She really wanted to see the spring ephemerals that come up in the woods. And the nature of spring ephemerals is that they only bloom for a few weeks, couple of weeks in the spring, usually like early to mid-May, and we hit it just at the right time. We even found a rather rare plant that we had to take a picture of and identify, and found out it's this kind of super special thing. So anyway, that was great. My second finished object is for my niece who turns 6 today. Today is her birthday. My brother shared that she is sick with a fever and cough, which makes me very sad, but I sent off her present a little bit later than I meant to, so it will arrive later this week, and maybe she'll be feeling better by the time she gets it. Anyway, I recorded about a 10-minute clip explaining about that project, so I will insert that here. I am here to record another quick clip about a finished object because I don't have time to do a whole episode right now. It is Saturday, May 25, so it's the holiday weekend, and this is like the only day we're gonna get where it's not raining. It's been a very dramatic week weather-wise. We had some really bad storms come through. They actually had to close schools on Wednesday because there were so many trees down that a lot of roads were blocked and power was out at some of the schools. So anyway, it's been a little wild over here, and we were fine. Fortunately, our house was not damaged and we only lost power for a few hours in the middle of the night. But some people have been without it for a few days, and yeah. Anyway, so not doing a whole episode here, but you know that because you're watching this later. But I do have something I just finished that I really need to get out in the mail today because it's a gift. I did show this on the beginning of this on my last episode. This was sort of an impulse cast on last minute decision. I made this little vest for my littlest niece. She turned 6 on Tuesday, and I could not resist making her this pattern. I think I said in my last episode that I was debating about whether to make her anything at all because it's hard to knit things to wear for a 6-year-old whose birthday is right at the beginning of the summer, who spends a lot of time outside and runs warm and all this stuff and doesn't really need any more toys and all this. But when I saw this pattern by Carla Eggers, who is, I believe, Danish designer, I could not resist. And it's because of this colorwork pattern on the bottom. All these different hearts in these different iterations. I love how the background color at the bottom eventually transitions here into being the contrast color. And then it just finishes up with a solid color at the top. You could, of course, start with a lighter color and go dark. If you had different colors or scraps to use up in the color work, I think that could be a really fun variation. Another thing about, so I just want to say a couple of really appealing things about this pattern. Also, it's well written, it's very clear. She also includes an alternate set of charts if you want to do like a Halloween version with some skulls, which is very fun. Also, she has an adult version, so I went ahead and bought both. I think there was a discount for buying both of them together. So I might have to make one of these for myself, like with the skulls on it in black and white. I watched the TV series Wednesday, I think that was on Netflix, with my daughter when it came out, and it's so good. Jenna Ortega is so good, and the whole like wardrobe aesthetic is very fun. And so the idea of having like a black and white vest, especially something with a little bit of a spooky theme, is just very appealing to me right now. So anyway, here it is. I made the size that should fit a 6-year-old. I added some length to the body before getting to the armhole. I think she has you do the color work and then pretty much start the armhole right away. That seemed too short to me. And it's possible that my row gauge is different than hers. I did not really check very carefully. I just checked for stitch gauge, but of course it's very easy to add length between that and the armhole. I also had another issue where the front and the back were 2 different lengths, and maybe that had to do with row gauge. I'm not really sure, but when I was in the process of fixing it, I recorded this little video clip, so I will insert that here. I'm working on this adorable vest for my little niece who turns 6 next week. It's called the Lighthearted Slip-Over Mini. And I am so close to being done, but I have a little bit of a setback, so I'm going to show you. The instructions have you do the front first. So I followed all the instructions, and the original shoulder came about up to here, which just looked like a huge armhole to me. But I went ahead and followed the instructions anyway. And I discovered that when I did the back was much shorter, like by about this much, a good 2 inches. And I didn't want to make it taller, and it didn't really make sense to have the shoulder fold over that far to the back. So at first I thought, okay, I'll just rip back the shoulders on the front piece and attach it there. Well, I did a 3-needle bind off and just discovered that this neck hole is way too small. There's no way that will come over her head. So what I'm gonna have to do is rip back the front to about here, I think, or maybe just a little up. It looks like after the decreases, then I did several rows before binding off the middle stitches for the neck. So I'm just gonna have to rip back and do all of that shaping lower in order for the armhole height to match on both the front and back, and for this neck hole to be big enough for her head. It shouldn't take too long, but it is a bit of a setback. Let me talk about the yarn. I just realized I haven't done that. I used Brooklyn Tweed Dapple. I picked this up on a whim at the Sow's Ear, my favorite yarn shop, local yarn shop. It's a DK weight, 165 yards for 50 grams, I think. Does it even say? It doesn't say. Anyway, it's 60% merino, 40% cotton. This was on sale at the Sow's Ear, so I think maybe they're not going to sell it anymore. Like, it was 25% off. It was a pretty good price. I should have found something in my stash, but I really liked this. The wool cotton blend was very appealing to me because I think this will be cooler than if I just used wool. Also, I could tell that it's hand wash only. And I could just tell from picking it up and feeling it that it would have a pretty good grip. Like, however they made this, however they spun the cotton, does not make it slippery, and also because it's not superwash wool, I could tell that that it would feel pretty good for color work, and I was right. The 2 colors I used are Barely There and Honeycrisp. So this is sort of a bright red, and this is, well, Barely There. It's maybe leaning towards a blush pink, but it's essentially just a pale beigey neutral leaning pink. And I bought 3 skeins of the light color and 2 skeins of the Honeycrisp, and it's more than I needed. I could have gotten away with 1 fewer skein of each color because this is what I have left. Just like scraps of this 1 skein of Barely There plus this whole one, and a whole ball of the red plus partial of another. So one drawback to the pattern is she doesn't really give you yardage exactly. She gives you grams, but you can figure out the approximate yardage because she says like what yarn she used which I don't remember, whatever it is in the pattern, like how much yardage it is per 50 grams, and then how many balls she needed for each size. So you can figure it out. But I was standing in the store, like staring at the pattern on my phone, just like doing the math in my head. And I tend to overbuy anyway, because I really don't want to run out. So yeah, so now I have all these left and I'm not exactly sure what to do with them. Because it's a wool cotton blend, I don't really want to mix it with 100% wool, and I wouldn't make like a hat or mittens out of something that's got cotton in it, and it's very delicate. It breaks easily if you're not careful. So anyway, it'll probably just go in the stash and marinate for a little while. I could go back to the store and get a third color and make something stripy for myself, but I don't need to be buying more yarn for myself at the moment. The last thing I will say is that I really love the fabric this creates. It's very, very soft. I think this will feel very good next to skin. It shouldn't be itchy. But I had a little bit of an issue with rowing out. That's when you knit in the round up to the armholes, and then you split to go back and forth. And usually I don't have too much of an issue with my gauge changing or the fabric looking different when I'm knitting back and forth versus knitting in the round. With this yarn, it was a little more obvious. I think it kind of blocked out, but you can still sort of tell. Yeah, I think you can see at the top here that the stitches are not quite as even. I think my purling rows are probably a little bit looser than my knit rows. I feel like that is more prominent when I am knitting with plant fibers, and this is, it's 60-40, it's 40% cotton, so I think the cotton content just makes that a little more obvious. With wool, it's elastic enough that it kind of doesn't matter. So not a real big deal. Most of it blocked out, and I don't think the gauge was significantly different, if it was different at all, because it came out pretty cute and a good size. I hope it fits her. I haven't seen my niece since Christmas, and I just I went by schematics and took a guess as to just how big to make it. So anyway, it's time for me to package this up and send it to her. And now you can go back to the rest of the episode. Okay, my last knitted finished object, because I have some sewing to share with you. I should have mentioned that earlier. Anyway, we'll get there. I don't have notes today because I am just like in a million different places. I have a work trip this week. We just came off a holiday weekend. I'm getting ready for my kid to graduate from high school. I'm just like a little bit all over the place. Anyway, I did finish another pair of socks. Speaking of my kid who is about to graduate, he hasn't gotten these yet because I wanted to show them to you. If you've been watching for any length of time, you're probably like, oh my God, these again? Haven't we heard enough about these socks? No, you haven't, because I have more to say. Not that much more to say, just that they're done. So my kid is graduating. He's going to college next year. He is staying in the upper Midwest, and part of how I am coping with all of my feelings about that is that I'm making him a bunch of socks to keep his feet warm where he's going to school. So this is the fourth pair in a series of probably 6. I am using Knit Picks Hawthorne fingering weight yarn. Look, I have a label for you. I even have a label. The color I use this time is called Klamath Falls. It's sport weight. Well, they say it's fingering weight, but I think it's more like sport weight. It's 357 yards for 100 grams. I use size 1.5 needles for these socks. He really likes the socks out of this yarn. He really likes this particular sort of recipe that I've come up with. So that's what I'm going with for now. So I cast on 66 stitches. I always knit them cuff to toe. I do a 1x1 rib cuff. I continue with a 1x1 garter rib. So every other round I'm knitting just knit stitches. That continues down the top of the foot. I do a slip stitch heel, and that line of knit, that column of knit stitches from the garter rib, I continue down the back of the heel. And that's pretty much, well, I always do like a garter ridge along the side of the heel flap because I think it makes it easier to pick up the stitches. I don't know if that's showing up for you. Kinda, yeah. It's there. My goodness, I don't know why the focusing is so bad today. Maybe I'll close this shade, that might help. Did you hear that thunder? I don't know if it's coming through. Anyway, okay. We're just gonna have focusing issues today. I'm sorry about that. Finished pair of socks. This is the yarn I have left. It's probably enough to do like a gnome. What if he had a set of gnomes to match all of his socks? No, I'd get sick of those. It's enough for like a gnome or just the cuffs on another pair or something. I don't know. I save my leftover sock yarn. I don't always know what I'm gonna do with it. So that's it for my finished objects in knitting. I have a couple works in progress to share, not a ton. And then a major sewing project to share. So I'm gonna talk about that. My works in progress, I'm gonna start with 2 pairs of socks because these are pretty straightforward and easy to talk about. I have shared these before. I still just have the one, but I started a pair I was gonna make for somebody, and then my daughter really liked them, so now they're for her. I love the streaks of neon going through this yarn. It is called Splash. This is Valley Yarns from Webb's. Huntington, that is their basic sock yarn. Huntington Splash. So you can see that it's a solid color, that they've got streaks. So the color stretches are a little too long to be called speckles, but not long enough to be stripes. So I'm saying they're like neon streaks. This is giving me like early 90s vibes in a good way because it's on socks. And my daughter loves to wear dark colors, so this works great for her. The stitch markers just show every like 20 rounds or so. And that helps me keep track of how far I've gone so that when I do the second sock, I am not squinting at tiny stitches and black yarn and trying to count like 65 rounds in one go, because that is a challenge. Yeah, for her feet, I cast on 68 stitches. Her feet are a little bigger than mine, so I always make her socks roomier than I would make for my feet. Using size 1 needles, and I don't think I have anything revolutionary or interesting to say about the construction other than that. Yeah, plain stockinette is the way to go for this dark color, and they would be going a lot faster if I knit exclusively on them, but of course I haven't been. There's no deadline for these. They're just good meeting socks, waiting room socks, concert socks if it's not too dark in the auditorium. Oh, let me tell you where I didn't bring these along. Okay, let me show you the next pair of socks I have. So this is a pair of socks I started for myself, and I was trying to knit these during an event at the high school last week. We got 10 minutes into this thing. It was their film festival. They have a film festival every year for student films. It's really cool. Unfortunately, this was last Tuesday night. You hear that thunder? We got about 10 minutes in, so we saw 2 short films, and all at once, everybody's phones just started blaring and buzzing, because there were storms rolling in and there were tornado warnings, and we ended up having to evacuate the auditorium, go into their designated shelter area where, like, with 200 people kind of stuffed into this little room for well over an hour. By the time we were finally allowed out, it was way too late to finish the film festival, and you know, we all went outside having no idea what we were going to find, because even though there hadn't been tornadoes, there had been like straight line winds that blew down trees, blew down fencing from construction, blew down signs. There was a porta potty turned over. Getting home was an obstacle course. Anyway, I was trying to knit these socks during all that because we were just sitting there waiting it out. So here we are. These, the yarn I'm using is Knit Picks Felici. The colorway is called Carrot Cake. I'm not sure where this pink comes in. I totally see the orange and the green and the like cream color. That all makes sense to me. I don't know about this. I kind of like it. I mean, they're socks. None of these are colors I would necessarily wear like next to my face, but these are socks. So there you go. I cast on 64 stitches and I use size 1 needles. And I think that's about all I have to say about those socks. So my last work in progress to share with you. I shared about this before. This is a sweater I am making for myself. It's called Garland by Stephanie Levin. And I have made quite a lot of progress on this in the last week or so. I mentioned that we're coming off the holiday weekend. It was Memorial Day, so I had Monday off. And this was the first weekend probably all year that I actually had no obligations. I didn't have to attend an event or a concert. I didn't have my own rehearsal or performance to do. It was such a bloody relief, let me tell you. So I got a lot of garden work done and I got a lot of crafting done, including making some progress on this. So I am almost done with the body. This is top down, you can probably tell. What I love about this design is the viney colorwork pattern going down the yoke. I think that's why it's called Garland. I could very easily see this being worked up in colors that would be really good for a holiday. Like if you really wanted to lean into like a Christmas sweater or holiday sweater, you could do like green and white. You could incorporate a little red or some other Christmassy color in there. Or even like use a few beads or stitch a few little berries. I don't know, if you were feeling festive. I am using, also it would be really good like if you had a gradient set or mini skeins or something. There's just a lot of options you have with the way there are many vines here. There's 6 on this yoke. I am using a natural colored yarn, you can probably tell. This is Clara yarn that was produced by Clara Parks. She isn't doing this anymore, so this is pretty special. This is fingering weight. It says it's fingering weight. I am knitting it up like a sport weight, so I'm getting 6 stitches per inch. And I really like the feel of the fabric that way for a sweater. I don't think I would want to knit it any denser unless I was doing like mittens or something, you know, that you really need it dense and kind of stiff. Here's the label. So she like has a whole sort of sheep to skein thing, or did for a while, where she learned what it was like to like work with a small farm, have a fleece produced, milled, sold, all that stuff. This is the color Alabaster. I'm not even sure which one that is. It might be that tan color. So it was milled in Wisconsin, and it's from Pennsylvania grown CVM Rommeldale wool. And I don't really know anything about breeds, but I can tell you that this is I hate when people say things feel woolly, because like it's wool, of course it feels woolly. but it's kind of crisp, yet not scratchy. And because it's woolen spun, it's a little bit delicate, which has me slightly nervous about how well this is going to hold up, but so far it's been okay. As you can see, I've used the dark brown for the main color of the sweater. I have this cream that I used for 4 out of the 6 vines, and this tan, light tan that I used for a couple of the vines for the collar. And I might have a problem with not quite having enough yarn. I don't know yet. So I'm getting a little creative with how I'm treating the edges of this, trying to make that brown stretch out a little further. So let me show you what I have left of the dark brown. I have this ball. I haven't weighed these. And I have this, which is, I think, pretty much a whole skein. Each one for 50 grams is 215 yards. I have this ball, which is less than a whole skein, it looks like. Now, when I first talked about this project a few weeks ago, I mentioned that this yarn got some moth damage, so I've got all these little balls, which like my giant man hands are covering, so I don't know if you can tell how much I've got. Well, you know what I should do is weigh this and just figure out what the yardage is. But anyway, this is about what I have left for the sleeves. It might be enough for long sleeves. It might not. So I'm either going to get creative with the other colors. I have plenty of the white. I felt like this big ball plus most of another one of the white and just a tiny little bit of the tan. I am using the tan for... This is all I have left of the tan. Focus, focus, there we go. So I'm using this for the ribbing at the bottom, and I'm just gonna knit till it runs out. Anyway, so there was some moth damage, so I have like these partial balls because I didn't want to get rid of it. This is such special yarn. But yeah. So for the sleeves, what I'm gonna do is take all of this dark brown that I have. Because this is a warm wool sweater, even though it's pretty lightweight wool, I want to get as close to long sleeves as I can. I will take the brown and weigh all that I have left. I'll put it all in a bowl to weigh it, and I will calculate how much yardage that is approximately, and then just divide it in 2. I'll put it in 2 different bags or something, so that at least I have the same amount of this dark brown for each of the sleeves. And if it turns out that it's not enough for a long sleeve, I will get creative with the other colors. For the body of the sweater, I added, I don't even remember if the pattern calls for this, but she has 3, she has different charts. So the vine pattern for the yoke, you can see it goes 2 different directions. So there's a couple different charts for that. But this is over a 6-stitch pattern repeat, and then she has a smaller scale version over a 4-stitch repeat. And that's, I think, what you can use at the bottom of the sleeves. So I chose to do that at the bottom of the body of the sweater, just to help balance it out, to use up some more of this tan, and then I'm gonna do the ribbing in the tan. So for the sleeves, what I would like is to have enough of the brown to do the whole sleeve, and then I can just use the white for the cuffs. But if I have to, I will incorporate color work and transition into the white for more of the cuffs. We'll just see. Somebody mentioned to me once that I could look online to see if anybody else has some that they're willing to part with. I personally would rather just use up what I have, get creative, and not end up with more leftovers, because as much as I love this yarn, I want to use it and I want to have it out of my stash, and, just maybe feel like I'm letting go of some of that need to sort of collect and hoard and keep things as long as possible, because, I do have that tendency from time to time. It's a thing. Okay. So those are my only works in progress for knitting and I have finished things. I really want to have my needles totally clear by the June solstice because the Yarniacs have their very, very fun Colors of Fall knit along that starts then and it goes through the September equinox. That's a very fun knit along. I'll explain more about it when I am like ready to start. But I need to finish this sweater and sort of clear the palette in order to get ready for that and to start some new things I'm excited about. I have a couple of very old works in progress that we're just not going to talk about. So if you just came here for the knitting, that's it. But if you want to see my big sewing project that I finished up this weekend, keep watching. Now, if you've been watching me for a while, or at least this year, you will know that I made a promise to my mother-in-law that I would make her a set of aprons. I made this promise to her over the Christmas holidays, and so that was like end of December, and her birthday is a week from yesterday. It's June the 3rd. And I kind of got started on this and then stalled out because I was super busy and then we were traveling and then I was sick and busy, and all of a sudden I was like, holy shit, her birthday is like around the corner. I need to get these done. So the deal is, my mother-in-law is this wonderfully sweet person. I would do anything for her. I love her. She's not into crafting at all. She had to sew when she was a kid. She learned how to sew as a teenager, and I think she hated it, honestly. It's not her thing, and I think it's just sad when someone is forced to do something that they really don't like that much. I mean, we all have to do things. We all have to like do unpleasant chores, right? Like nobody likes taking out the garbage, but with all the gender expectations and all that, you know, it's just really unfortunate in my mind that people who grew up in a certain kind of culture in a certain time just were like forced into all this domestic labor that maybe they shouldn't have been. Anyway, she doesn't sew now, and that's totally fine. But she knows that I like to, and she asked me to replicate an apron for her that she had inherited from her own mother. Her own mother was likewise not much of a seamstress and only kind of did what she absolutely had to. But the apron she had as a prototype was just really wearing out. She needed it replaced. She really likes the design of this particular thing, but couldn't find anything to purchase online. It's a pinafore style, and I think she told me that she could only find like crossback designs online, and she, for whatever reason, she just really doesn't like that. So she gave me this old falling apart one. I took it apart to make the pattern. Here's what's left of it. So you can see there's like this middle panel with a curved neck. There's side panels with pockets, and what is this part? Oh yeah, this is like the back part of the pinafore, and then there was a tie coming off both sides. Well, I think if I try to explain to you why it was so difficult to reconstruct these, I would be talking for too long, and I'm not sure that it would make sense because I was showing my family as I was trying to recreate these aprons, and they were just like, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense to us. But let me show you the first one I made. So this was my least, oh, she also gave me fabric. Fabric that I think her mother got at old Ben Franklin stores or yard sales or something. Like, at least the first couple of cuts were, she had no sentimental attachment or particular liking for them, but she didn't want to see them go in a landfill and wanted them used. So, sure. So I started with this striped number. If I'm going to be perfectly honest, I don't really like this fabric. I don't like the colors. I don't like the striping. When I washed it, I realized how hard it was going to be to work with because it's super drapey. Like maybe there's some rayon content in it. It's unclear to me. So I decided to line it. And I picked up some white muslin from Joann's, excuse me. You know, pretty basic. It was $3 a yard or something. I wanted something very lightweight because if an apron's going to be lined, I didn't want it to be super heavy. So I cut out the pieces, you know, the front, the sides, the back in both fabrics. And then I had to try to figure out how to make the lining work without exposed raw edges. And also figure out how to sew part of it together so that I could actually turn it right side out. That was a real challenge because of the way this neck hole works. Anyway, it took some cursing, took a few tries. It took another trip back to Joann, which the one on my side of town is in bad shape, y'all. Like, they don't have enough staff. They have kind of limited hours. Everything's a mess. Like, I feel bad for the people who work there. Anyway, I ended up getting double fold bias tape to put around the sort of side holes. It's not really an armhole, but the side holes, and the neck. And the lining, I did not stitch it closed at the bottom because I realized that it kind of needed to be separated at the bottom. So I just hemmed it up separately. You know, I ended the seam sewing them together here. And this is the first apron. I also pieced the pockets because I was running out of the stripe fabric. So that's actually kind of cool, the different directions of the stripes. But I wonder how much she's gonna like this one, because I have a feeling one of the things she liked about the original apron was that it was very lightweight, and this is not so lightweight with the lining. So that's done, and then I thought, well, I really don't want to line another one because it's a lot of work and it's kind of heavy, and I don't know that she's gonna like it. So for the second apron, I didn't line it at all, and I decided to go with bias binding for all of the edge finishing. Like, every single one of these edges is curved, basically. And you know, honestly, this might be the one that worked out the best. I'm not sure. So I even did French seams to attach the side panels. So I really didn't want to have exposed raw edges. This is fabric she gave me. It's a quilting cotton. It's actually pretty nice. You know, it's this sage green with little pink roses. Not my style. Not her style either, frankly. I don't ever see her wearing these colors, but it's an apron, who cares? So, if you want to look at the inside, you can see that there's like bias binding all the way down the sides and around the bottom. And it actually like works out okay. You know, can you see? Can you see? So yeah, basically, I mean, to wear it, you put your head through here and your arms through here, and you look pregnant with your shawl underneath. And you know, then you can tie the straps in the back. This is actually kind of big for me, but she is several inches taller than I am, so I'm hoping that works. But that's the deal. Now for the last two, I didn't want to deal with all that bias binding. Attaching bias binding is a pain. In case you haven't done it before, if you have curves, let me tell you about the steps involved. First, you, in order for it to work properly, first you stay stitch. So you make your stitches a little bit wider and just stay stitch very close to the edge along the curve in order for the fabric not to totally distort and stretch out of shape. And then you sew the bias binding on right sides together, and then you have to understitch to help it lie against the inside, and then you have to iron it, and then you stitch it down on the edge. So it's like 4 layers of stitching or something. It just takes forever. I know I'm sounding complainy. It was actually a pleasure to make this for somebody so special, but I spent many, many hours on this weekend because I really wanted to get them done. Anyway, for the last two, I decided a partial lining would be my best bet. So, and this fabric is pretty cool. My husband and his family lived in Kenya. He was born there, and they lived there till he was about 6 or 7. Then they came back to the States for a bit, and then they were in South Africa. So there's this fabric that probably came from Kenya. I'm not sure if my mother-in-law had it or if it was with her mother's things, but this is from a cut of fabric that she gave me from Kenya. So I was cutting around this huge print. It was like this big rectangle, but the way the print was done, it looks like you would cut a hole in the middle and then slit so that you could wear it like a tunic kind of. So I was working around that print and incorporating the border print, the border pattern, also on the side panel. So I'm pretty happy about how that turned out. And I lined just the top part. So I didn't line the skirt of the apron. I lined maybe I should turn this inside out. I hope I'm not just like fidgeting and moving too much, but I lined just the top part, the pinafore part, to give it a little more body. And yeah, I still had to do bias binding, but I think that worked out okay. And in order to hide all the ends that's a knitting thing. In order to close the seams, I didn't do French seams here, but in order to hide all the messiness here, I just had the waist strap go all the way across. So this one's pretty cool. This one I'm proud of. The final one is also a large scale print, probably from Kenya. This is a much lighter weight fabric, so again, it needed to be lined in the top, but I made sure to incorporate the large border in the side panels. So yeah, for this one I used red bias tape. I purchased the bias tape. I didn't have it in me to try to make it because I can make bias strips, but that involves cutting strips of fabric and putting them through a thing and ironing them and sewing them together, and that was just a step a little too much for me. I mean, I did like literally I spent all day Sunday doing this because it was raining, so I couldn't do anything outside. Anyway, yeah, aprons for my mother-in-law. So her birthday is coming up. We all signed a card. I need to package these up and send them to her. I have to say, like, taking apart the original and tracing the pattern was not difficult. Figuring out how to put things together, make sure there weren't raw edges showing or raw edges that would be a problem, and figuring out how to do all the finishing, like how to put it together and do all the finishing details was a really frustrating at times, but a really interesting sort of engineering process for me. I have no training in engineering. I mean, I'm a humanities person through and through, but I think I do have sort of a methodical, mathematical, or at least geometric approach to things like this. And it was interesting. It taught me that I will never ever draft a sewing pattern or write instructions, because I don't know how I would possibly write instructions for how I put these things together. But it was an interesting problem to solve. And now I can move on to some other sewing projects. I can get back to that quilt that I need to finish, and who knows what else. Well, is that all I have to share today? I think that's all I have to share with you today. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.